Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is take. Now, you might know by this point, if you've watched parts 1, 2, and 3, that take is really our verb of the week. This verb has so many different meanings, so I've tried to break this into small pieces in hopes that it will be more easily understood by those of you who are watching. So today we're going to look at 5 more definitions for the verb take. One is to mean to carry or bring. As an example of this, I had a doctor's appointment recently and I took a book with me, right? So I carried it, brought it along with me so that I could read as I waited for a doctor. A second way you might hear the verb take used is to mean to use as a route or a means of transportation. You have probably heard someone say something like, I'm going to take a bus, or I'll take the train, or another means of transportation. A third way you might hear the verb take used is to mean to accept or to receive something. I recently had a friend say that they were taking a new job, right? So they had received a job offer and they accepted that offer. A fourth way you might hear the verb take used is to mean to achieve something. In the 3 previous weeks of videos, I talked a lot about sports and the Olympics. And this is a verb I heard used to describe a person or an athlete or a group of people, a team, who had won a certain event. So a phrase I heard was this athlete, so a name, takes gold, right? So it meant that they had achieved the best performance and were awarded the gold medal. A fifth way you might hear the verb take used is to mean to act on an opportunity. Now, this one might feel a bit similar as to that taking a job offer, but this is something that you may hear from different presenters. Sometimes, as I'm teaching, I might say, I want to take a few minutes to introduce some new vocabulary, right? So I'm acting on the opportunity of having this time. That's all that's meant by that. Now, each day in my videos all about take, I'm reminding students that there are so many different meanings for this particular verb. So I want to encourage you to watch parts 1, 2, and 4, 4 will come tomorrow, that are all about different meanings for this particular verb. It would just be way too long of a video if I tried to cover all of those meanings in just one. So please remember that take is an irregular verb. To make the progressive form, I'm going to drop the E and then add ing to form taking. The past tense form of this verb is took, and the participle form of this verb is taken, T-A-K-E-N. So we have different spellings here. We are not adding an ed ending to this particular verb because it is irregular. Now it's time for us to spend a little more time looking at some phrasal verbs that are very common with take. And the first one we're going to start with today is to take from. This is going to be a phrasal verb that we separate. So we'll have the verb take, could be in the present, past, or future form. Then we'll have an object and then the preposition from. And this phrasal verb take from means to acquire, receive, or steal something from someone. Let's take a look at an example sentence. They won't take advice from teachers, right? So here, won't take is simple future, and I would say it's more closely to that idea of receiving. They will not receive and probably listen to the advice that teachers have. Another phrasal verb you might hear is take in. This can have a couple different meanings we're going to look at too. The first is to absorb information. An example of that could be, I was so distracted today that I didn't take in much during the meeting. So here, didn't take in is an example of a negative simple past tense form of the verb. A second way to use take in is to mean to assume care and support, either for someone or for something. Or an example of that could be, our neighbors have taken in a puppy that had been abandoned. Right? So they found a small dog, a baby dog, if you will, and have decided they are going to care and support this animal. The next phrasal verb we'll look at is take into. This means to transfer someone or something to a new changed condition, or a changed state, or a changed situation. An example of this might be, the suspect was taken into custody yesterday. You might see this type of sentence in a newspaper article. You might hear it in a kind of action or crime drama if you're watching movies or TV shows. Was taken into is an example of the passive voice, and this is passive voice in the simple past tense. The next phrasal verb we're going to look at is take off. This can also have a number of different meanings. We're going to focus on 3 today. The first is when a plane leaves the ground, you'll hear the phrasal verb take off used. An example of that could be, this flight never takes off on time. So another verb for this is depart. So this is an example of the simple present. I'm talking about a particular flight's habit or their routine of not departing on time. A second way to use the phrasal verb take off is to mean to remove something. An example of that could be, please take off your shoes. Someone might say that as you enter their home. And here, take off is an example of an imperative or a command. A third way to use the phrasal verb take off is to mean to be absent. And usually this is an absence with permission. So one way you might hear it would be, he's taking a week off for his surgery. Another way to say this sentence, he's taking vacation, he's taking PTO. These would all have similar meanings. Okay? So he's taking off is an example of the present progressive or present continuous. Okay? Let's continue looking at some more phrasal verbs. The next one we're going to look at is to take on. This means to assume responsibility. An example of that, they're taking on a difficult task. So they have assumed responsibility. They are in charge. If there's a problem, they're the ones who are going to be responsible for it. The next phrasal verb that we're going to look at is take out. This one has a number of different meanings as well. We're going to focus on 5 ways to use take out. And the first is to remove something. An example of that, we take out the trash every Sunday. Okay, so again, here's an example of the simple present. It's a habit that maybe our family has. And I think I forgot to mention, they're taking on a difficult task is another example of present progressive or present continuous. The second way to use take out is to mean to borrow money from a bank. Here's an example of that. Is she taking out a loan to buy a car? This yes or no question is another present progressive or present continuous form. A fourth way to use take out, or third, sorry, I've lost track already. A third way to use take out is to mean to borrow something in a formal manner. An example of that, all children can take out 5 books from the library. So here I'm using the modal can to note permission. All children have permission to check out up to 5 books. The next way you can use take out is to mean to destroy or damage something. Here's an example of that. The tornado took out power lines for miles and miles. So this again would mean the power lines, the utility lines that you see were destroyed or really severely damaged. And here, took out is an example of simple past tense. The last way we're going to use take out is to mean to go out socially. Sometimes this is used to discuss a couple who's going out on a romantic date, but it doesn't have to be that. The thing to note is when we're using this particular meaning, though, we're going to separate our verb and our preposition. Let's look at an example. They took their children out for a celebratory meal. So you can see took and out are separated by the objects. Who's receiving the action? Well, the children were the ones to go out socially. Now, let's spend a little time looking at some words and phrases that are related to our verb take. And the first word we're going to look at today is the compound word take off. Now, we just talked about this as a phrasal verb. When it was a phrasal verb, it was 2 words. But notice our noun form here, it's just 1 word. Okay? And when you see take off as 1 word, it's a noun and it's referring to the action of something becoming airborne, likely a plane. And one way you might hear it used is if you happen to be on an airplane and you hear a flight attendant or pilot say, "We are ready for takeoff." Another compound word is take out. Okay? When we use this noun in a sentence, we're generally talking about food that has been cooked and sold by a restaurant, but the food is not going to be eaten in the restaurant. It might be eaten at home or in a park or in your car. Okay? So an example of this noun in a sentence, do you want to get takeout tonight? Right? So someone who's asking this is maybe suggesting, I don't want to cook. Do we want to get food from somewhere else and have that for dinner? The next phrase we're going to look at is to take it out on, and then this is usually going to be followed by someone. And what generally is happening in this phrase is we're describing that some other person is being sort of abused, maybe verbally, like you're yelling, you're screaming at someone. But you're doing it because you're angry at something or someone else. So not the person that you're directing the yelling or the anger at. Let's look at an example of this. Don't take your bad day at work out on me. Okay? So in this example, right, your bad day at work is the it. It's the thing, right? So that's what the person is really mad at. But they happen to be yelling at me. So I'm trying to say, don't yell at me just because you're angry about something that happened at work. The next phrase that we're going to look at is to take it upon oneself. So this phrase means that someone is taking responsibility for something and they might be doing it without asking others. An example of that, he took it upon himself to respond to the customer's emails. So maybe he didn't ask his coworkers or ask his supervisor about how to handle the situation. He just did it. Our last phrase that we're going to look at today is to take 5, take 10, or take some other number. Okay? Generally, if you hear this, someone is implying they need a break or they want to take a break for a certain number of minutes. So take 5 would be take 5 minutes of a break. Take 10 would be 10 minutes of a break. Now you could use really any number you wanted there. I've pointed out 5 and 10 because I think those are the most common to hear. So how you might hear someone say it would be like, let's take 5 and come back to finish up the meeting. So again, this is just another way of saying we're going to have a 5-minute break. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you'll tune in for part 4 tomorrow. Thanks for watching.